Ah, ah, God damn it!
Looks like we're stuck in some traffic.
Oh wow, thanks, I couldn't tell.
No problem.
Well, looks like we're gonna be here for a while. How about I tell you a story
Oh, cool, sure. What about?
about this ugly guy named Gaddafi? Gaddafi is a polarizing figure in today's world, as people can't seem to fully understand him. The United States of Israel and its allies claimed that Gaddafi was a tyrant, and he had to be taken out. But that isn't entirely true. Gaddafi did a lot of good things for his poor, undesirable wasteland known as Libya. Gaddafi was born Myanmar Mohammed Abu Minyar al-Gaddafi, but we are just going to call him Gaddafi because that's long as fuck. He was born into a really poor family. His parents were camel herders and were illiterate and lacked formal education. Seeing how they turned out, they didn't want their poor old ugly Gaddafi to succumb to their brand of life. So with all the money they had, they were able to send Gaddafi to school. This wasn't the norm in Libya at the time, you see. Libya, or the United Kingdom of Libya, was a federally owned state ruled under Western monarch Idris. Because Idris didn't really care about Libya and only really cared about the sweet, sweet European money, Libya effectively became a poverty-stricken immediately. Libya was like most places. Too many mouths, not enough to go around. Gaddafi, however, was able to get an education early. From this, he became really aware of the Western country's impact on Libya and how it isn't a really good one. Gaddafi's grandfather was killed by an Italian and British forces during the Pasta invasion of 1911. When Idris came into power, he banned political parties and centralized all the power and money from oil reserves for himself. Early Gaddafi would sleep in a mosque far away from home. When he went to secondary school, he was given access to the media, and from this, he learned even more. He learned about the conflicts like the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, the Egyptian Revolution of 1952, the Suez Crisis of 1956, and the short-lived existence of the Arabic Republic, and many more conflicts. This soured his opinion on these colonial non-Arab countries, especially Israel. He started to admire the political changes of the Arab Republic of Egypt under President Gamal Abdel Nasser. Nasser fought for Arab nationalism, the rejection of Western colonialism, neocolonialism, and especially Zionism, and a transformation from capitalism to socialism. In 1961, Gaddafi would take his first steps to seizing power by starting to protest and hold demonstrations criticizing the monarchy in his country while simultaneously sending support to Nasser. As a result of his public outcries, he was banished from his town of Saba. He moved to Misrata while still attending school. Even though Gaddafi supported Arab nationalism movements, he refused to join any banned political parties in his area because he did not believe in factionalism, or just because he wanted to make something himself that he could be the leader of. Instead of joining a cause, he would live vicariously through the works of Nasser, the French Revolution of 1789, Michel Aflaq, Kevin Hart, biographies of Abe Lincoln, Sun Yat-sen, and Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. He would then enroll in the Royal Military Academy of Benghazi in 1963. From here he would fund a revolutionary group called the Free Officers Movement. The middle of the 1960s saw great tension rising against Idris's government. People were tired of him rigging the country's oil wealth all for himself. Arab nationalism was only growing, and in 1969, anti-West riots broke out all through Libya as Idris's government was seen as pro-Israel Goislop. Idris would then flee to Turkey and Greece, which gave Gaddafi the opportunity he needed. He would start Operation Jerusalem in September 1st, 1969.
Nice.
Gaddafi's free officers occupied airports, police departments, radio stations, and government offices. They arrested the crown prince and made him relinquish his claim to the throne. Once removing the government, Gaddafi announced the foundation of the Libyan Arab Republic. He sought to change Libya to freedom, socialism, and unity. Gaddafi would make himself chief chairman and commander-in-chief of his Revolutionary Command Council, RCC. RCC was made up of young lower-class men, different from the wealthy upper-class government of before. The government launched the Free Revolution. They tried to make Libya less reliant on food imports and instead made many irrigation systems and increased agriculture productivity. He then improved Libya's oil sector, increasing the cost of their oil to foreign nations. This increased domestic profits from $3.7 billion a year to $24.5 billion. For what seemed like forever, Libya's quality of life was finally changing for the better. By 1979, the average capita income was $8,170 up from the previous $49 in 1951. He then prohibited alcohol, nightclubs, and churches. El Gaddafi for that. Though the RCC doubled minimum wage, introduced statewide price controls, and introduced rent reductions. Gaddafi set a law in 1972 affirming equality of the sexes and wage parity. Gaddafi outlawed the marriage of females under the age of 16 and made women's consent a prerequisite for marriage. Gaddafi W. Gaddafi created a wide range of educational and employment opportunities for women and people of the working class. He used oil money to fund social welfare programs, which led to house building projects and improved healthcare and education. Gaddafi would aim to end homelessness in his country. He increased the number of hospitals. This venture would cause a lot of diseases to be eradicated. He implemented free education and healthcare. He provided employment for thousands. Though, as we know, all good things have to come to an end, and Gaddafi's government would start to slowly fall down. In a meeting with the four powers, being France, the US, Britain, and the USSR, they sought to meet with Gaddafi and extend their diplomatic recognition. Securing military bases in Libya, Gaddafi refused, however, and ordered all bases and troops to be removed from his land. Gaddafi then started to expel all Italians and Jews from Libya. He would suggest neighboring countries to stop allowing NATO troops to be stationed there. He began a military buildup, buying weapons from France and the Soviet Union. Gaddafi was very anti-Israel, and sided with Palestine in the Israeli-Palestinian conflicts during the 70s. Gaddafi would fund the Black September organization, who perpetrated the 1972 Munich massacre of Israeli athletes in West Germany during the Olympics. He also supported the Black Panther movement. El Gaddafi. He would punish by flogging people who committed adultery or people who were gay. He made a book called The Green Book, where he outlined his anti-Western ideas and how to be a good Muslim by throwing out the Hadith and Sunnah and only listening to the Quran. This angered many Muslims. Gaddafi started spending a lot of money on foreign causes because he wanted to get on the good side with foreign countries because he was scared of the powers of the US and Britain. In return, his country was neglected and people were outraged. 1974 saw Libya's first civil attack on Gaddafi's movement. Fellow RCC members were forming a coup, but later foiled, and all members had to seek asylum elsewhere. Any members that couldn't seek asylum were executed. Many people started to speak out on Gaddafi's belittling of his country. Gaddafi would start jailing anyone that spoke out against him. He even crossed well over the line when he executed a couple of them. In 1973, Goyim Israeli forces shot down a Libyan airplane for flying too close to their boundaries, or in other words, Israel had to get involved because they are Israel. This, along with Egypt's peace talks with Israel, enraged Gaddafi. Instead, he wanted to continue the war. Gaddafi started donating $500 million to aid African countries to get more allies because he feared Western power. In return, neglecting his country once more. In 1977, Gaddafi had a country makeover, which included changing the flag. In theory, the people held high power in this new country, but it really was just a rubber stamp for Gaddafi's policies. Libya would then fight a short war with Egypt, and Gaddafi would build strong friendships with Yugoslavia and Romania. In the late 70s, Gaddafi pushed Libya towards socialism. He distributed houses, land, and wealth, eliminated private businesses, and replaced them with state-controlled operations. He created revolutionary committees of young loyalists who would spy on people, control the media, make arrests, and enforce Gaddafi's ideas through fear and violence. Gaddafi L. Though he still fought for women's rights, he created many enemies and ordered many assassinations of people who were growing from speaking out against him. In the early 80s, Libya's oil reserves crashed from 21 billion to 5.4 billion. Gaddafi would respond to this by mass deportations of foreign workers and spending more money on irrigation systems for agriculture. I guess that's one way of handling the situation. Gaddafi would survive multiple assassination attempts. Libya would become involved in Chad's civil war, suffering a humiliating defeat in the 1987 Toyota War. Under President Reagan, relations with Libya worsened, and the U.S. accused Libya of supporting terrorism and imposed oil embargoes and sanctions. Classic America always butting in. In April of 1986, U.S. launched Operation El Dorado Canyon, sending airstrikes on Libya that killed over 100 people, including civilians, and bombed Gaddafi's home. Gaddafi would survive these attacks and use it to strengthen his image across countries, though domestically, he faced growing opposition and continued to rule through fear. In the late 80s, he launched a revolution in a revolution, reopening small businesses, reducing the power of committees, and releasing hundreds of political prisoners trying to make his country happy. He introduced the Great Green Charter Human Rights in 1988, promising better rights and limits on the death penalty, though many promises were not upheld. Despite the attempted reforms, opposition to Gaddafi was still growing strong. Multiple more failed coups, army rebellions, and Islamist insurgency in Benghazi. In 1988, it was strongly suggested that Libya blew up a UN plane, and heavy economic sanctions were placed on Libya as a result. The sanctions damaged Libya's economy, but many African and Arab leaders criticized the UN and supported Gaddafi, as the destruction of the plane was only rumored to be by his hands. In 1999, Libya handed over two suspects, but Gaddafi still pleaded innocent. Frustrated with the Arab world, Gaddafi strongly suggested towards Pan-Africanists, pushing the United States of Africa and funding the African Union, once again forgetting about his country. Gaddafi improved relations in the West in 2003 by abandoning his nuclear chemical weapon program and paid $2.7 billion to the UN to compensate for the plane bomb. In 2011, Gaddafi strongly supported Tunisia's dictator and suggested the people of Libya would be happy if they adopted his system, which would then lead to major protests in Libya, driven by anger over corruption, unemployment, and decades of repression. Gaddafi responded with extreme force. His troops opened fire on protesters in Benghazi, killing hundreds, which caused senior officers to defect and the uprising to spread rapidly. He imposed a no-fly zone, and NATO launched a military campaign to protect civilians. The wall started to crumble for Gaddafi. With heavy Israeli and U.S. support, rebel forces advanced westward, capturing Libyan cities, and ended Gaddafi's 42-year rule in those cities. The conflict was brutal on both sides. Gaddafi was basically a terrorist at this point, committing multiple human rights violations, and the uprising against him were literally terrorists. On October 20, 2011, Gaddafi attempted to flee his hometown where he was hiding in, but NATO striked his vehicle down, forcing him and his guards to hide in nearby drainage pipes. Soon he was discovered by rebel terrorists, captured and beaten. He was then murdered, and his body would be displayed in a meat freezer for 4 days for everyone to view.
Wow, man, that's brutal. I don't know what to think. There's a lot of ups and downs you said about his life.
Gaddafi wasn't a good man by any stretch of the imagination. He did a lot of bad things and neglected his people on numerous occasions. But he wasn't this monster betrayed by Western leaders. He truly did a lot of good things for his country and wanted the best for it. It's sad to see him branded as this tyrant, as it's just the West's justification for their actions. The Libyan uprising at heart was just a bunch of pissed off Libyans, but their tactics were destructive and they were killing anyone who didn't agree with them. And the US decided to give these guys guns and money, all because they shared a dislike of Gaddafi. As a result, today Libya is still in shambles. Two rival sides control both sides of Libya. The dollar, minimum wage, and morality are at an all-time low, while violence, poverty, cost of living, and suffering is at an all-time high.
Hey, I think the traffic cleared up.
Yeah, you're right.